Welcome, I'm Fujiwara, a vintage denim advisor. You might notice the change of scenery today. That's because we are at Fake A, BerberJin's sister store. Today, I wanted to use the 50166 model as a theme. For the 66 models, I thought it would be easier to understand the year in the era and explain while looking at the dead stock. And that's why we're shooting at Fake A. I've been in this field for about 20 years by now, and I've learned a lot from seeing these dead stocks. Mr. Sawada, who is also my big mentor, has taught me so much about these dead stocks, leading me to where I am right now. So today, I would like to ask Mr. Sawada, who happens to be the manager of Fake A, to help us out when explaining the 66 model. Here's our guest, Mr. Sawada. Hey, I'm Sawada from Fake A. Fake A has always been famous for its number of dead stocks, and recently, the stock is decreasing. For the 66 models, there are early and late models. If you look at the back of the pocket, this is the single stitch, which indicates the early model of 66. When you hear the 66 model, you might think of it as 1966. But in fact, it's the 501WX model that ended in 1966. After that era was the era of Big E. Even though it's called the 66 model, it actually emerged in the 70s. The reason why it's called the 66 model is because on the flasher of the dead stock, there is a notation that says 1966. Also, right above the 501, it says care instructions inside of garment, which can't be found on earlier models like Big E. I think it's fair to call it a 66 model if it has this reference. Mr. Sawada has been working in the used clothes industry for nearly 30 years, and it's always been called the 66 model, right? Whoever named it the 66 model first must have looked at the button at the back. There is a button with a 6 engraved, like this. There are ones without it too, but people know it as the 66 model because of that. But in reality, this is just a mere coincidence. The truth is, as I mentioned earlier, these letters are printed on the flasher. There are Big E with these too, so sometimes we call it the Big E 66. Another thing is, it's been stamped on the fray, and the letters are printed on the inside, which is another indicator for the 66 model. Fake A still has a decent amount of stocks even for a perfect size like 31 by 32. In the old days when we worked together with Fake A, all the shelves were full up and across. But now that it's about 12 years since then, honestly, there's not much left now. I wanted to explain today, while everyone thinks that 66 comes from 1966, it is more like a model name. In fact, there is a small tag on the inside. Actually, Mr. Sawada taught me about this too, but it is written as 501, and from the left you see a 10, a 4, and a 6. It means October 1974. The top button has a number 6 as well as the 6 right here. These show the year and month for this 501, and 6 indicates the factory name. You can check when the 66 model was actually made, especially in the 70s when they even wrote the month for it. Some people even look for ones that were manufactured on their birth month or year. If you want to find one made in your birth year, you can find it if you were born in the 70s and onward. This perfect sizing costs 228,000 yen plus tax. As you can imagine, as time passes, good sizes decrease in stock and prices will go up, With a size like this, it is currently around 200,000 yen. Also, here's another dead stock. The basic appearance is the same. However, this one doesn't have the manufactured year. You can see the 10 for the month, and there is a 2. If you look at the top button, it also says 2. Even though this is the 66 model, that doesn't mean they will always have a 6 on the top button. This shows that the buttons are not indicators for the 66 model. The buttons from other factories were often used, and that's probably what happened for these. The remainder of Big E is often used on the back of the top button of 66. This is the result of Mr. Sawada's thorough research. He has seen literally thousands of dead stocks. Essentially, not all 66 models have the 6 button. I think that is another very interesting thing about the 66 model. This dead stock of 30 by 31 is running around the price of 198,000 yen plus tax. Here's a different one. This is 32 by 36, and I would call it a golden size. This is also a single stitch and a small E. The back of the top button is 16, so this is from factory 16. Now there are many theories about this, but for some reason, the buttons with 16 tend to fade very well. The indigo is a little bit darker, so there were many times when I thought the color fading was good on the used jeans, and it turned out to be the 16 buttons. In fact, the color of indigo is actually quite dark. And the same is true here with the 32 by 36. 36 is a little long in length, but for people who take it to wear themselves, it's not a bad idea to adjust 1 to 2 inches. When hemming, think about how much they'll shrink after washing. You want to give a margin of about 5 centimeters. You want to think about how much they'll shrink before hemming. Today, I also brought one pair from my store. The color is about 60% and it is beautiful. There is a stamp printed on the back of the pocket. You can check the year and stuff here. This stamp is stamped on it, and this is... It may or may not be included, but if a small E model has it, then it is the early model. If the back of the pocket is stamped, it is the earliest within the early model. Once again, this doesn't necessarily apply to all. I often get asked when the switch from Big E to small e happened. Big E was actually used until around 1973, right? There is a theory people used to say that it was until 1971, but we have both seen many dead stocks, and it's clear that Big E was made until around 1973. Conversely, there is also a small e of 1973, hence the transition. We call it the 66 model, but the early model of 66, or the Big E, existed from the early 70s and changed into the small e form from 1973. Next, this is also a single stitch. Now the actual size is about 30 by 29, and there is no damage to them. In this beautiful condition, the price is 49,800 yen plus tax. If it was darker, or if the condition was even better, then you would be looking at even used 100,000 yen. This was an early 66 model, so it was from the early 70s. This right here is the 66 Big E. It says 501 care instructions inside garment. This is the 66 model, but also with the top button of 6. 66 with the red tag is considered Big E. Inside this pocket, there is a stamp. Next video, we'll talk about 66 more in depth. Make sure to subscribe to our channel as well. This is 501. Next to it, it says number 3. This is 73 years. Around 1973, there's a stamp on the back of the pocket.